It's chaos.
It's a different type of Sunday scary.
It's your newest obsession.
It's Dirty Driving, a Formula One podcast.
We're the Hornsby sisters. I'm Katie.
And I'm Megan.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello.
We are so excited to be back talking about another one of our wonderful constructors, McLaren.
Yeah. Our boys in Papaya.
Our boys in Papaya. It is arguably Megan and I's favorite team without playing too hard of favorites. And I think this week we're going to start with our drivers and then move into a little bit of McLaren history. I think Megan might have a surprise for me. And then we are also going to discuss how McLaren is diversifying themselves in the field of motorsport. So I'll kick it off with Lando Norris. I was incredibly surprised to learn this about Lando, but he originally had interest in being a motorcycle racer. Megan, did you know that?
I feel like I knew that, and I also was like that he would never make it. Moving on with my day.
His idol was Valentino Rossi, as most of us know, is one of the great MotoGP drivers, but his interest really switched to four wheels when his dad took him to watch a round of the Super One National Kart Championship. And that's when he began falling in love with four-wheel karting. He started racing at age 7 and claimed his first pole position, becoming the youngest karting world champion in 2014. And he really just blew everyone out of the water in karting. He had a successful career there and made his way through single seat competitions, competing in F3 and F2 with Carlin Racing. In F3, just to give you guys some perspective, he competed with George Russell and Alex Albon in up until the last race, where he was able to finish second. So in F3, he competed with the likes, and that's where that kind of Twitch quartet kind of got started, the friendship at least. He signed with McLaren as a junior driver in 2017, and honestly, the rest was history. After a season of being a test and reserve driver, he made his rookie debut in 2019, paired with the highly rated and far more experienced Carlos Sainz, who luckily we talked about last week. But his rookie season was super impressive. He beat out the Spaniard in their head-to-head qualifying battle pretty much every single time, so came out of the woods and became this impressive qualifying driver. He scored points on 11 occasions and missed out on a top 10 drivers championship win. So he took 11th, and then in the following year, 2020, he took 9th. So progressively getting better and better. He had a decent year in 2020, but he really came to shine in 2021 alongside Daniel Ricciardo. He claimed third at Imola, Monaco, and Austria, and he finished second at Monza for his best ever finish and supported the team in the 1-2. So he took 4 podiums in total and took 6th in the Drivers' Championship. But the biggest news...
But you've literally failed to mention his Muppet move of the year.
Oh, I wasn't going to do that to him. I wasn't going to do it to him.
I mean, you have to be honest. The kid he calls himself a Muppet, but the biggest Muppet move of 2021 was the tire strategy at Sochi.
The tire strategy in Sochi, where he failed to switch over to inters on the last couple of laps. I wasn't going to do this to him, but I will do it to him.
No, we have to drag them sometimes.
It really just shows that he does not have the experience that drivers like Lewis Hamilton have in terms of knowing when are the right calls and when are not the right calls, and when to listen to the team and then maybe when not to listen to the team. So Lando definitely is still growing as a driver and still learning every single year. I think the thing that shocks me the most about Lando is that in February, before the start of this season, we saw him sign an extension with McLaren until 2025. And I think the biggest thing that shocks me about that is that will have been racing with one team. And I know others have done that, but is McLaren really in the position to be where Lando wants to be? And that is something that I think I question as a fan. I don't know if that's something that you think about very often, Megan, but yeah.
I mean, to be seasonally appropriate, he literally put all of his Easter eggs in one basket and is just crossing his fingers and hopping along, hoping that it works out. I think it's a bold move.
Bold, and again, I just have fear that McLaren maybe won't be able to take Lando to the places that he deserves to be, and he's kind of signed his life away until 2025 unless, some magic unless something goes terribly wrong and he's, able to get himself out of that contract. So I think that's the one thing about Lando as well. He's still learning. And I think this is either going to be the greatest thing he's ever done for himself or a very big learning opportunity.
I have a feeling it's not good. I have all the hope in the world that McLaren's going to pull it out. And I have no doubt that we're going to see Lando Norris at McLaren until 2025. I'm just a little could you have waited more than just, nothing in the 2022 season before you signed that?
Yeah, not even giving them a chance to show what they're doing with this new car before he, again, signed his life away. So, I'm glad, Megan, you are as interested to talk about this as I was, because it's honestly just a shocking move.
So, shocking, bold, but also, I feel like it's a very Lando move to make in a weird way.
It's very secure.
Yes, it's very secure, and I think if anything positive can come out of it is that it shows his commitment to what McLaren are doing and the McLaren path. It almost is a little I believe in the mission of McLaren more than I believe in McLaren's current performance. I also don't know how much this is tied to his desire to be part of their esports community longer.
Yeah, definitely. I think he sees a future with McLaren and doesn't want to say goodbye to it too quick. But I don't know how long he's going to be performing the way that he wants to be performing in F1.
Full stop. I'd also like to point out that I am just as critical of Ferrari and their signing of Charles Leclerc. And I'm just as critical as Max Verstappen for signing that idiotic contract to stay at Red Bull.
Yeah,
these are gigantic. I mean, he will, Max will stay through the new engine. So again, is that a show of extreme faith in a team's mission and ability to extract performance? Or is this just very bold career decisions in order to have security in having a seat? I think it's probably a little bit more security in the seat.
Yeah, definitely security in the seat over loyalty. Loyalty to the brand, loyalty to the team. There has to be, obviously, that loyalty to sign for another 3 to 8 years, but it's a lot. It's a lot to commit to. So the only other thing I wanted to throw out about Lando was that in September of 2021, he started his own karting team, which I think is incredible. And then that he's just this, again, exciting young talent that's on track. And I think we're just going to continue to see him make mistakes like Sochi, make mistakes like others that he's made in the past, and grow from them and see what kind of driver he really turns into and develops over the next 3 years.
It'll be fascinating. It'll be interesting to see like the Lando that Lando is in 2025 and or 2024 in his last year, whatever the year is. What year? 2025.
2025.
And compared to like the Lando of like 2019, you know, if Drive to Survive is still around, you'll go back and watch those episodes or really even hear kind of like Lando speaking in them, and you'll be like, he's got it. I mean, I even think he's a much more mature and obvious, like, duh, he is. He's older, but even his ability to like analyze and discuss a race after the fact, you can tell that he understands it on a different level. And that's been kind of cool to see. Let's take it from a youngin' to an oldie but a goodie, an oldie but a goodie. An olden. Someone who's been around the game for a bit. And you know, my favorite driver on the grid. He's won my heart and will forever have my heart, even though he makes me want to like hit my head against a wall some weekends. It's Daniel Ricciardo, DR3. I'm just going to start this off by dragging the man. If Carlos Sainz is the king of career moves, then Danny Ricciardo is the literal jester of them. I love him, but like, dear Lord, baby Jesus, you left Red Bull, you went to Renault. Renault was a dumpster fire. I did love his Renault days, the black and yellow on that man. Chef's kiss. But now he's in the Papaya and he struggled last year. Yes, we had the 1-2. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was a high point, but we as McLaren, as Danny Rick fans, suffered to have that moment of joy. We suffered
and have been suffering,
and now we are back to suffering. We had a little bit of a reprieve in Australia, but I have a feeling we're going to suffer some more. So let's start at the beginning. I'm going to run through this pretty quickly because we've talked about him a lot, but also people just know a lot about the dude, probably because he talks so much. I think that's why I like him. So Daniel Ricciardo started his Formula One journey at Toro Rosso back in 2012, which I did put the dots together. I was a senior in high school. And I was like, why wasn't I watching Formula One then? I was late. When he joined Toro Rosso, he had actually already been in the Red Bull Junior Driver program for 2 years, which he had joined in 2010. He was also partnered with Jev, which really kind of broke my brain because I knew that, but now that we had watched the Formula E documentary, and I just can't imagine those two being partners at all. I just feel like that was a dumpster fire. They were younger, but I feel like it was a dumpster fire. But both DR3 and Jev were vying for one singular seat at Red Bull, which Mark Webber would retire and DR3 would get the promotion because he had been consistently ahead and consistently outperforming Jev. He spent 5 years at Red Bull, what I like to call the pre-Evil Empire days. I think that's what I'm going to start referring to it. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to start claiming they've become an evil empire. I'm still working on the timeline. Tune in. I'll have it ready for the Red Bull episode. His first year, 2014, at Red Bull, he actually beat Vettel and he won 3 races. Again, totally forgot about all of that. Just like, whoop, brain didn't work. Vettel signed to go to Ferrari that year. And so I feel like Daniel Ricciardo was Christian's first hope at a new young baby champion, like, I have found the magic egg again. Let me make a world champion.
Baby Grogu.
Yes.
Like Mandalorian. Baby
exactly.
Grogu.
He'd already had Vettel. Vettel left. Now he was like, I shall have the Australian version of German Vettel. Didn't really work out. In 2015, Daniel Ricciardo would partner with Kvyat. And then in 2016, 4 years into it, Kvyat would be replaced with Verstappen. Insert quote, joke, some funny line here about Kvyat being replaced by Verstappen in many aspects of life. And if anyone understands what that means, you're with it. I'm not going to drop names here. Oh, wow. I just went on a tangent there. So then for 2017 to 2019, Ricciardo and Verstappen would partner, and they would, have some rocky times on track, but would really have a bromance in all of our hearts. I mean, the videos of the Maxwell days, them sitting on a boat in Monaco, joking around. Oh, I think of those days quite fondly.
Those days.
I mean, as I'm literally thinking about it, I'm crying. The unwrapping the gifts in front of the tree. There's the yacht scene in Monaco that I love. It's the eating the food where Max like vomits.
The jackfruit where when they try to open it. There's so many fond memories. I'm getting misty.
I mean, they're great days. They're the time where they were sitting in lawn chairs on the track. I mean, we could go on for eternities. But really, their rockiest moments were Baku in 2018 and Monaco in 2018. Monaco 2018 was definitely Daniel Ricciardo's darkest days. We've already talked about it. We've relived it enough. I'm not going into details. If you need to know anymore, look it up. Don't ask us. We can't talk about it. Ultimately, Red Bull would get rid of their Renault engines and Daniel Ricciardo would turn around and go to Renault. I love that happened. In a weird way, it was like not comical. It just was this weird like breakup. Like they broke up with Renault and Renault was like, and we'll take the dog too. Not that I'm calling Daniel Ricciardo a dog.
But Renault got to keep the dog.
Yeah, like Renault kept the puppy. That's so unfortunate for Daniel Ricciardo, the puppy. 2019 and 2020 at Renault would just be rocky. Let's just go there. 2019 was rough. I don't even want to talk about it. I'm just going to go with that. 2020 would be a little bit better. He would podium. We would get the Cyril bet. Cyril would get the tattoo. That's very strange looking. I don't want to go into that either. I don't know my thoughts on it. It's creepy looking. I've decided, come to the conclusion. In 2021, DR3 would join McLaren. We do come to find out that actually McLaren had been courting Daniel Ricciardo to leave Red Bull and go straight to them and bypass the Renault days. And let me tell you, again, here's where I'm going to say Carlos Sainz, master of career moves. Daniel Ricciardo, not. Should have taken that McLaren offer, but unfortunately it was Carlos Sainz. Not for us, but for Daniel Ricciardo. 2021 would be a rough year, like I said, up until Monza, where we had the I never left moment, which brought just pure joy to all of us Daniel Ricciardo stans who had suffered for so long waiting for that man to give us the performance that we needed. Please note me pointing over my shoulder at Lando Norris pouring champagne. It brought joy. After that, though, shit would hit the fan again. It would slump. We had that triple header, 4 points in 4 races, abysmal performance. And ultimately, we would learn at the end of the season that 2021 was the year that Daniel Ricciardo actually learned why the man was fast. He reflected. It took him that long in his career. Imagine any other career, literally anything other than being a race car driver and being well, I've been here for, 9-10 years and I've just learned why I can do this.
Yeah. Lots of therapy, I think, in 2021 or 2021. Maybe it started in 2020 post COVID, but I think Daniel got some of the confidence back that he lost along the way.
Yeah, he did. You could see it. And I think we've had this year's been rocky, except for, a little celebration in Australia. But you can still see that, well, the car is a struggle. But you can see that there's less of a a general like dissatisfaction with his performance and more of a lack of understanding in the actual car, which is different than what we saw last year. It was painful last year. Like those races, the one race where he was like, what's the fine for not going to press was like horrific for me to remember. I just love the man.
Yeah.
I don't know him, but I love him. I feel like I know him. Daniel Ricciardo, yes, it did take him that long to figure out his racing style, but I think now that he's sorted it out, and now that I think he has the skills to articulate what he needs in a car, that will make the difference. Because that's one thing that people were talking about. A lot of people mentioned last year, and it was a big conversation. I mean, we had talked about it. It felt like he didn't actually know what he needed to be successful. And now I think he actually maybe has those words. I mean, I'm not in the rooms, but I feel like he gets it now. What else did I want to say about Daniel Ricciardo? Oh, I know. I knew there was one last point I wanted to make. He has his own wine. And I think that is why the man is also just amazing. And now he has a Shui decanter. So if anyone if anyone is in Australia and wants to purchase one and ship one to the United States illegally, let a girl know, because you can't buy them here.
Megan needs it.
I need it. And also, Daniel Ricciardo, if you're listening to this, I know you're not. When are we going to get this stuff in the U.S.? Your U.S. fans are waiting. We are waiting
I love
patiently.
It. We are waiting.
Impatiently, actually. Let me confirm that. Impatiently. Okay, Katie. Now that I've babbled on about Daniel Ricciardo for enough time, let's get to what I've decided we're going to do. Now that we've talked about the drivers.
Yes, Megan has a surprise for me. She has failed to cue me in on anything, so I'm, as always, never prepared for what she has to say.
We are going to play Would You Rather, McLaren style.
Oh, okay.
Here we go.
I love it.
Here we go. Question
Let's
number 1. Would you rather ride horses with DR3 in the Outback or go dune buggying in Dubai with LN4? Yes, I am calling them by those letters and numbers.
Oh, this is the first one immediately is already so difficult.
I mean, how do you decide this?
I've never been dune buggying.
You've never ridden horses in the Outback.
Yeah, but I've ridden horses. I think I'm going to go dune buggying for this one.
I'd just like to let everyone know that she's saying that riding horses in Kentucky is just as cool as riding horses in Australia with Daniel Ricciardo.
Okay. I'm sure there's going to be an opportunity for me to pick an activity with Daniel. So I'm picking my first activity with Lando.
Okay, now we know what's happening here. She's playing the long game.
I'm playing the long game.
Maybe Lando Norris is playing the long game with his career.
He is playing the long game with his career.
Oh my God.
See. I'm nervous for the boy, but we'll figure it out.
Okay, question number 2. This is so great. Would you rather take a Zak Brown slap shot to the chest? You're wearing light pads, not full goalie pads, light pads, because we now know that he plays ice hockey. Or, would you do the Milk Bowl Challenge with Lando Norris driving, but in your personal vehicle? I know you don't have a car. Pretend you have a car. You have the blue egg back. The slap shot.
I think I'm taking. Am I paying to detail the vehicle afterwards?
That semantics. Slap shot, milk bowl.
Slap shot.
Same.
I feel like that's like a one and done thing. I'll be bruised for a little, and then we'll just move on. The milk jug is like.
Mom had milk spilled in her car, and it reeked for 6 years. So
yeah.
I also want to know if they burned the car that they did the milk bowl challenge in, or if it was detailed. I need to know.
Had to have been detailed. Had to have been.
I'm sorry. They had to
Minimally.
burn it. They had to burn it. There's no way you could recover after the Carlos Sainz Lando Norris milk bowl thing.
They probably knew something was wrong with the car, and that's the one they chose. And they were like, the stitching is wrong on the interior. Drive this one.
And then we'll just like burn it. You'll never get the smell of warm milk. Ugh. Okay,
Ugh.
next one. Get ready. Would you rather only drink DR3's wine forever? It's the only thing you can drink, but you get to drink with him, or never eat sushi again, but get to have dinner with Lando Norris?
No water, only wine.
I guess you can have water, but you
Okay,
can the only alcoholic beverage you could ever drink is St. Hugo Shiraz with Daniel Ricciardo after you've Shuey decanted it.
I think I'm picking wine and Daniel Ricciardo for this one, because if it means that I get to have wine with him every time I drink wine, then there's no guarantee that he's not going to fall in love with me and leave
She's
his
drinking
girlfriend.
wine every day. Every day.
I'll drink wine every day. Glass of red wine with Daniel Ricciardo at the end of every day. I don't think it gets much better than that.
No, I feel like it doesn't. Okay. So this one is not as, this one's going to be very hard for you to decide, but it's not as like tricky. Would you rather hang out with Team Quadrant or get up to all the mischief with Daniel Ricciardo's gaggle of friends? Team Quadrant or DR3 gaggle? Just know that Dak Shepard is technically part of the gaggle.
I know that one. This one is the hardest one. Cause like I'm not really like a gamer or like a Twitch streamer, but
You could build Legos.
they seem like a fun crowd.
Like Daniel, like Lando and his girlfriend did on Friday night.
They built a Lego set.
Did you see that they built a park? She was riding a lawnmower with him.
I did see that. Indeed. And the caption was like building my own golf course or something like that.
His own par 3. Also, like they were riding a lawnmower together.
Yeah, all right. I'm gonna pick Daniel Ricciardo's gaggle of friends. I feel like they're a little bit more high class and maybe more our speed, Megan.
I feel like it's a lot of live music in like Austin, Texas with party shirts on.
Yeah, definitely more our speed.
But also, like, why were they riding the lawnmower together? Why did they just take turns?
And she probably got on for the cute photo. Like,
It's weird. I don't like anyone enough to ride a lawn. First off, never going to catch me mowing the lawn.
yeah. So end of discussion right there.
Even for a golf course. Sorry, intern. Okay, last one. Ready? This is going to be a hard one too. Would you rather give up all American football allegiance to become part of the Bills Mafia, or give up all other sports and become solely into golf with Lando? So Bills Mafia with Daniel, or always on the golf course with Lando?
Bills Mafia with Daniel. Which hurts my heart because we're Saints fans, but at least then I can still watch the Saints play.
Honestly, I went Bills Mafia just because I feel like it would be utter chaos to attend one of those events. And I really want to attend that event like VIP style. Like I refuse to be like actually part of that tailgate because I think I would put myself through a table.
Yeah, I could see that. I think that would be like me restraining you from jumping onto the table and losing us our chips and salsa and our hot dogs.
What's so insane, Katie, is that they have a completely separate table to put themselves through, then the dip table.
Then the dip table.
But that seems like a perfectly
well,
good waste of a table that could have additional dips on it.
Yeah, like, I want 2 dip tables. I don't need a table just to jump through.
We could have a dip table and an app table. We don't need a table. I don't know. Add that to the list.
Table.
We add that to the list. We're going to a Bills game.
All right, Bills game. We'll invite Daniel. See if he'll come with us too.
Now
She's giving me the thinking look. Now we're thinking, for sure.
We would totally wear party shirts like that man. Also, no one wears a party shirt like Daniel Ricciardo wears a party shirt.
Yeah, especially that one Gucci party shirt he wore that one time that I will never forget and I'll never stop talking about.
Also, side note before we get into anything of seriousness, have you thought about the fact that he can pull off like the deep unbuttoned shirt look and everyone else that does it looks like a creepy like old man?
Yeah.
Like, how is
creepy
it that he can do it and no one else can? It's a superpower.
Because he's Daniel Ricciardo.
Genuinely, his superpower is that he can wear a shirt that's only buttoned in 2 buttons.
3 buttons, maybe? Yeah, 2, 3.
I mean, I'm going to have to investigate. Come back to me with my data on how many buttons Daniel Ricciardo buttons on his shirts.
She can do that investigating. She can do that investigating, and I'll segue us into talking about McLaren's wonderful history. Okay,
this is history.
McLaren say that again?
I said that is history.
All right. I'm taking over. I'm not letting her talk. All right, so McLaren Racing Limited is obviously, if you didn't know, a British motor racing team. It is the second oldest active team, and it is the second most successful team behind our first deep dive, Ferrari. It's known for having some of the greats drive their cars. We're talking Fittipaldi, Hunt, Prost, Senna, Hamilton, Raikkonen, and Alonso. So they are a winning team. They have won 8 Constructors' Championships and 12 Drivers' Championships, the most recent one being Lewis Hamilton's first ever championship in 2008. In the early years, it was founded in 1963 by the New Zealander Bruce McLaren, who was a racing driver himself. They entered their first Grand Prix in Monaco in 1966 and won their first GP 2 years later in 68 at the Belgian Grand Prix. Unfortunately, a couple years later, Bruce passed away during a Can-Am testing incident in 1970, which McLaren was also very popular and raced pretty well in the Can-Am American tournaments back in the day. Teddy Mayer took over after the passing of Bruce McLaren and led their team to the first win in 1974 with Emerson Fittipaldi and James Hunt. They took the championship. 1974 also marks the beginning of the 22-year long-standing championship of Marlboro before they left and started sponsoring the Scuderia Ferrari. In 1981, a couple years later, McLaren merged with Ron Dennis's Project 4 Racing. And if you're a fan of McLaren, you're probably very familiar with the name Ron Dennis. He took over as the team principal, but honestly, he went on to organize a full buyout of the original McLaren stakeholders and took control of the team. This began their most successful era. They had Porsche and Honda engines, and Lauda, Prost, and Senna won 7 drivers' championships and 6 constructors' cups. So it was an incredible couple of years for them. Williams was their only challenger, and the 2 teams battled from 1984 to 1994. In the mid 1990s, they hit a slump, but it did not take long for recovery. Honda left. They switched over to Mercedes engines, which they are driving now. And they grabbed a different cigarette brand sponsorship, West Cigarettes. Adrian Newey joined the team and would remain with them until 2005 when he left for Red Bull. And then Häkkinen took his back-to-back wins in 1998 and 1999.
Are they?
Go ahead.
This is a question, and if anyone has the answer, I'd love to know. Are they the only team that has been sponsored by two different cigarette brands? Technically, I think they are, because it was Marlboro and West Cigarettes. Which, by the way, their slogan when I was like reading about West Cigarettes, because they're a German cigarette brand, was "Let's go West," and that really bothered me because that's what one of our like high school phrases.
Yeah,
were.
our high school chant is
"Let's go West."
well, our high school is West, and so it's let's go West. Well, West is best. Yeah,
and their cigarette campaign was "Let's go West," which I wonder. No, there would be no way that anyone at Parkway West would have known that was their brand and had used it. But it would have been funny.
Well, and now they also have, unless, correct me, you might know this, Views or Views.
I think
the
it's
VUZE. Views, which is also nicotine. So that's 3 that they've had.
I guess technically 3, yeah. But like true old school cigs, I wonder if they are the only team that has had 2 different. I don't know. I should look that up.
Yeah,
we'll put that on the research.
Something for us to.
But Views has gotten them in hot water lately. There's a lot of people who are not happy that they're advertising for like a nicotine. I mean, they're like
e-cigarettes.
But to me, it's really interesting that Mission Winnow has gotten so much hate and Views hasn't gotten to the same level. At least not that I've seen.
Yeah, especially like they did a specific livery for Views, and I mean, like, not all of my friends, but a couple of my friends still enjoy a good e-cigarette, and, you know, they're one of the more popular brands, I believe, out there. So, interesting. Well, we'll take note of that and do a little research.
We should definitely
2007...
Sorry, not to interrupt you again. I just want to say, like, we should definitely do like a full deep dive into tobacco again, because that was really interesting to read about the sponsorship of Big Tobacco and how much money they've brought to the sport and are still not technically, they are bringing in terms of Views, Mission Winnow. It's also funny that we picked the first 2 teams we picked are Marlboro teams.
Maybe we'll drop a formation lab all about Siggies. Siggies sponsoring fast cars. All right, I'm going to jump back in, yeah? Okay. So in 2007, I could not mention this because it's part of McLaren's history. It's part of Formula One's history. It is one of the biggest scandals in Formula One, but it was known as Spygate. So in 2007, the FIA implicated McLaren in a scandal after a former Ferrari employee and a senior McLaren engineer had allegations brought against them for the theft of Ferrari technical information. It was the subject of legal action in Italy, and it went under an FIA investigation. In the first hearing, McLaren was kind of off the hook and didn't have any issues. But by the second hearing in September of 2007, there was enough evidence that was presented to penalize McLaren. They were disqualified from the World Constructors' Championship in 2007, and they were required to pay one of the heftiest fines in Formula One history of $100 million. Megan and I read a book about Formula One from the viewpoint of a mechanic that we highly suggest. And he talks about Spygate and what it was like to be in the team and hear from Ron Dennis that they had been fined all of that money and, that they were going to be okay, but that it was a lot of money that, had to be paid to the FIA.
Wait,
Yes,
sorry to
Megan?
interrupt.
She had a big
We're
moment
talking
of
about
shock.
Spygate. I have an additional would you rather question. Would you rather have dinner with Ron Dennis and discuss Spygate, or dinner with Fernando Alonso and have him talk to you exclusively about Spygate? Because we all know that year was a shit show between Hamilton and Alonso, because Alonso was pissed that the team had backed Hamilton for the drivers. So, dinner with Ron, dinner with Fernando. All they can talk about is 2008.
Dinner with Fernando, because I want to know more about that from his perspective. I want to know more about the Alonso Lewis headbutt from Alonso's perspective.
I think it would be fascinating to get Alonso's perspective and unfiltered without cameras around. Because anytime he talks about it, you can see that he's talking about it through a lens of I will be judged by the public. And so getting an unfiltered view, honestly, I think I would say the same thing about Lewis Hamilton and probably anyone in McLaren management at the time. What was actually going on?
Just like we all want to know what went on between Lewis and Nico, I'd love to know what went on between Lewis and Alonso.
Do I even want to know what happened between Lewis and Nico?
I want to know. I want to know. I want to know. But whatever.
I don't know.
We may never know. When Lewis writes his book, we might know.
I would love, love, love to hear the 2007, 2008 Lewis Hamilton rise, Fernando Alonso, Hamilton, kind of the battle of the young gun, the veteran who's just off of 2 victories with Renault. How do you get this? What is the push and pull there? And not so much from a he said, but more of a, how does it actually function internally to manage that? And I don't ever think we have gotten that from any other team. Granted, because Lewis has dominated, but Valtteri and Lewis had such a different relationship. So I'm fascinated on learning about those 2 years almost in isolation and isolated to just McLaren.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that book we read did highlight a little bit about, the teams per car were completely split and they didn't really talk to each other much. So it's how, as a leader of 2 separate teams, do you manage that? That's division between, at some point the pit crews weren't even speaking to each other. Which,
even reading that doesn't compute in my brain, because I can't imagine a team now being able to function that way. They rely way too heavily on the data of the other car. I mean, unless you're in Australia and Checo's what's wrong with Max's car? And they're it's not relevant. Keep going.
Keep going. Don't focus on that. So McLaren, I'll say my last thing about the 2007, 2008, but they went on to win the 2008 Drivers' Championship with Lewis Hamilton. Today, focusing on what they're doing next, we've got Zak Brown. Zak Brown is the chief leader of McLaren, and he's bringing them back to the forefront of F1. He joined the team in 2016 after being a driver himself and then founding his Just Marketing International company, which grew to be one of the largest motorsport marketing agencies in the world. And he's taking this 15 plus years of auto sport marketing experience to the team in terms of sponsorship deals. So we've seen McLaren working with the likes of Dell, Darktrace, Google, and Views to attribute success to McLaren, and not only success, but money to McLaren. Which brings us to the question, Megan.
It brings us to our question.
Is
Oh, sorry. I thought you wanted
go
me
ahead. Go ahead.
to say the words.
No, go for it.
No, you go.
Are we in another McLaren building year, and are they able to compete in the development war that is taking place?
Full stop, blanket statement across the board for all 10 constructors. The team that is going to be most successful in the next, not really now, but, the back half of this year and next year, and even the year after that, is going to be the team that really truthfully is able to strategize and stay ahead in terms of development and really be very, I hate to say the word strategic because I just said strategize, but be very strategic in where and when they bring upgrades, and really paying attention to where and when other teams are bringing their upgrades. So I think McLaren has the potential to full stop compete if asterisk they can play the strategy game, which we know is starting to play. Like, we can see it happening already. When is Mercedes going to bring their upgrades? When is Ferrari going to bring an upgrade? We know it's going to, they're going to start bringing them over the next couple of races. Will Mercedes bring that rear wing to Imola like we should have seen in Australia, or they plan to bring to Australia? I think over the next, month, 2 months, 3 months, we're going to slowly start seeing really the chess, the element of Formula One that is chess in terms of the car being played. McLaren now is claiming that they have a clear path in terms of their development. That is what Zak Brown has said. That is what is echoed in both drivers and Seidel whenever they're kind of speaking to the press, or when they were speaking to the press post Australia. We know for a fact that in Bahrain, they struggled. Daniel Ricciardo was out with COVID, so that took out his ability to have track time. But ultimately, practice was, what's the word I want to use? Hampered, limited, because they just weren't out on track. They had that massive brake overheating problem, which set them back in terms of development going into the season, and really set them back in terms of what data they had available to them leading into Bahrain and Jeddah, which were just not pretty to watch for the Papaya Nation. Not at all. Lando got lucky in Jeddah with that P7, but really that was just like a total shot in the dark luck out there. That was not based on car performance, or really that wasn't even Lando Norris's driving skills. Not that I'm saying he's not a good driver. That was just purely right time, right place to swoop in and grab some points. Melbourne, I hate to say, was a turning point. I'm not even going to say that, knock on wood. Melbourne, they had 18 points. So we do see a little bit of shining capitalization there. Lando Norris has been very honest that was 80%. Their success was 80% attributed to the fact that the track was a track that suited them. They only brought a small upgrade to Australia. So essentially that car that they were running in Australia was the same car that they were running in Bahrain. So really no problems have been solved. The car with the bad setup just fit Australia. I don't know if that's good or bad. I think in terms of getting them points, good thing. In terms of where that car is going into Imola, I'm a little concerned about this weekend. They still are struggling in the low speed corners. They're struggling with grip and just generally overall performance, which, next weekend is Imola, and Lando Norris is pretty freaking skeptical about their ability to perform. Daniel Ricciardo is a little bit like, hey, we'll be okay. It's fast flowing. The car is a little bit better than it was. We're starting to, understand it. I'm going to hedge my bets and say that Imola is still going to be bottom of the top 10s for them. We're not going to see the Papaya performance that we want. Points
No,
will be good.
not
Points
at all.
will be, if they can grab points, it will be good for them.
Yeah, I am concerned about the next few races for McLaren because I know we've got all season, but I feel like these next few races are really going to tell us what we're going to be seeing this year.
I haven't really heard, so like we know kind of where, we know that Ferrari is planning to bring upgrades to Barcelona. We know that there's going to be the rear wing is coming to Imola, or we've heard. We don't really know when McLaren is going to bring their like first set of upgrades. We're going to get a new floor on the Ferrari, I think, for Imola, if I remember correctly. I don't know what Red Bull's bring. I haven't read what Red Bull's bringing to Imola this weekend, but I feel like other teams have hinted where they're bringing upgrades. McLaren hasn't. I think they're playing the strategy game. I'm going to just tell myself that. It'll help me sleep at night.
Yes, it will. All right, the last thing that we've got to talk about with McLaren is the fact that they are unique. They have an IndyCar, an Extreme E, and an esports team, along with the Formula One team. So McLaren itself is much more than F1 in the world of motorsport, and it really pays tribute to how they're diversifying and preparing for their future in racing. Their Extreme E team, Megan, do you have anything to add before I hop into Extreme E?
No, I guess the only thing I wanted to say is that I do attribute, I don't even know why I added that. I do attribute a lot of this like diversification to Max Brown. He is a full stop A racer. Like, he admits it. He loves racing. The man lives for motorsport. I'm gonna throw this out here, just like when I said, Gunther, you looking for a wife? Zak Brown, I'm available. I like racing too, but you can tell that he is interested in racing and he's interested in diversifying McLaren. He's invested in the mission, passionate about the brand, and is doing everything he can to engage a young new audience. There's actually, when I was doing some research about Zak Brown, there's an article from like 2010 talking about, is Zak Brown like the new Bernie Ecclestone in terms of his ability to form deals and propel Formula One to new levels. And
yeah,
for that article to come out in the early 2010s, and here we have Zak Brown really doing a lot to push the McLaren name and really push Formula One. I think that's saying a lot. I don't really like Bernie, definitely. But I think the message there is more about ability to propel motorsport and champion motorsport. And that's what he's doing. And I think that's only evident in the fact that he's now not just building the Formula One brand, but he's rebuilding the IndyCar brand, building the Extreme E brand, and moving into esports, all with the undercurrent of like sustainability and really trying to push the technological envelope into making racing something that can continue for years to come, even in a world that is conscious about the environment.
Yeah, definitely. Which plays in the hand with Extreme E. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Extreme E, it's an innovative, all-electric off-road series that races e-SUVs. And their mission is to use racing to promote sustainability, similar in the fact that Formula E is doing so, but different because they race in remote terrains to raise climate awareness. So they focus their efforts on specific locations that need education and need that announcement that they are struggling because of climate change. And not only that, but they are promoting diversity with teams because they're required to have both a female and a male driver. So McLaren, their whole purpose of getting into this was to accelerate their sustainability and diversity efforts because they focus on carbon reduction, recycling and reuse, and all over elimination of waste within McLaren. The drivers are Tanner Faust and Emma Fillmore, and Emma Fillmore is the first ever female racing driver for McLaren. So I remember the day that they announced that, and it was pretty big. And so far, I've not partaken in watching a Extreme E race, but I think it's intriguing, and it's a completely different form of racing that I could get interested in.
I feel like I could actually drive one of those. Like, there's no chance in hell you're going to get me to drive an F1 car, or an Indy car, or even probably a NASCAR. But I feel like I would fucks with an Extreme E car. Like, that's kind of a car that, like, I feel like could take a little damage and I would be okay in. I also do love, I know. This is lame, but Zak Brown closed the New York Stock Exchange, and I know that he was attending there as a guest of one of their, I forgot the company, one of their sponsors of Extreme E, but I did love that they only brought the Extreme E vehicle. I know they were a guest of the sponsor of Extreme E, but like they could have probably brought, you know, an Indy car or a Formula One car as well, but they only brought the Extreme E car. And I thought that was really interesting that they were making his visit to the New York Stock Exchange solely about the form of racing, which most people in their portfolio that most people don't know about. Maybe we should, I don't know, let's watch an Extreme E race.
Yeah, I feel like we need to sit down and take a watch of one and see what we think about it. I believe you can stream it on YouTube. I believe.
Okay, we will do some research on that. But let's move on to another form of racing in their portfolio, IndyCar, which Katie and I have decided, drum roll please, that we are going to attend an IndyCar race this year. We're looking at tickets for the Bommarito 500 across the river in Illinois. I've been there.
The Bommarito 500.
The man literally owns all of St. Louis. If you are from St. Louis, you will know that. He even owns a school, I think. Or just kidding. He doesn't own the school. He's a massive donor to it. But we're going to attend the Bommarito 500. I've actually been to this race. If you remember the formation lap from last year, I had no idea I was at an IndyCar race. I just thought it was like random cars that went fast. This is before I was into racing. Turns out I've been there, and I'm actually now excited to go back, knowing names, understanding the concept of racing, and I'm not just there for the cheap beer. I'll be honest on that one. So let's talk about Aero McLaren SP. So in 2019, McLaren got back into not NASCAR. I'm an idiot. Got back into IndyCar. Specifically, they joined together with Aero Electronics, obviously McLaren Racing, and Schmidt Peterson Motorsports to kind of form a conglomerate called Aero McLaren SP, with the sole goal to compete for the NTT IndyCar Series and specifically hopefully compete and win an Indianapolis 500, which is on Katie and I's bucket list to attend. This whole plan was this resurrection of the IndyCar. From everything I can see, is a concoction of the mind of Zak Brown. In one specific article I was reading about this, Taylor Keel, who's the president of their IndyCar program, said that Zak is like very bullish and aggressive, not in a bad way, but in a, hey, like shows up and is like, hey, what can we do? What do you need? What do we need to make this possible? Like, I want to have success. He is full stop committed. Taylor Keel has been part of that team since he left college and joined Sam Schmidt Motorsport, and today he now runs like the day-to-day operations of the IndyCar side. And he has specifically said multiple times that his relationship with Zak Brown is really phenomenal. There's a lot of communication. McLaren, like upper management, Zak Brown himself is committed to making the team successful and are committed to the IndyCar mission, just like they're committed to the Formula One mission. Like, there is no using the IndyCar as like a a step stool for Formula One. It's going back to the original days of McLaren, where it was not just Formula One, but it was also IndyCar. It was American racing and European racing. And I do love that. I love that he's championing both. It's also great timing for him to do that as, Formula One becomes more popular in the United States. And I can definitely see how if Formula One becomes more popular, that IndyCar would become more popular over NASCAR. So the new McLaren IndyCar team began competing in 2020, which was 40 years after McLaren had the last time they had full stop competed in IndyCar, which is kind of pretty. I do love that. Ahead of the 2020 season, there was a massive restructuring inside of McLaren and in the IndyCar management structure that allowed for McLaren to come in as a majority owner of the car and allowed for Sam Schmidt and his partner, Rick Peterson, to actually take a step back, which is something that they had been looking for. So it was all copacetic. In fact, it was a really great kind of handoff and partnerships. Zak Brown has a lot of goals for this organization. Not only is he hoping that, they are competing at the forefront of Formula One, but they're competing at the forefront of IndyCar, but he wants his hands all over the organization, specifically McLaren's hands. They have plans for a 100,000 square foot shop in Indianapolis. So essentially his goal is to move the Indy team out of the Schmidt building into this new state-of-the-art facility that is essentially the MTC, but the American version in Indianapolis, and focused on sustainability and renewable energy. So it would be like a American forward planning unit, almost the reverse to what Haas has done, where they have their base in the Carolinas and they have their UK location. It's just the reverse for McLaren. And there is also plans underway for a third full-time IndyCar entry for Aero McLaren SP for next year, which they have already committed to the new cars. They've already ordered the parts, and they've already planned to hire an additional 25 people. So this is not just a short-term venture. That third driver would join Pato O'Ward and oh gosh, I forgot the other guy's name. Oops, whatever. Pato's the important one. Let's talk about Pato.
Yeah.
Pato's the important one. I hate to say that. I feel so sorry for forgetting the other guy's name. But Pato O'Ward and now Colton Herta, who has also joined McLaren as a development driver, are kind of what I am going to start referring to as the McLaren Junior Drivers Program. Zak Brown is committed to young talent. I mean, committed. I also fully believe that he's committed to an American young talent, which is why he picked up Colton Herta. I don't think he's ever specifically said those words, but I think the writing is between the lines. So Pato O'Ward and Zak Brown fully believes that Pato O'Ward is a future superstar. In 2020, he was the Rookie of the Year in the IndyCar Series. In 2021, he took third place in the championship. He had 3 pole positions and 5 podiums, including 2 wins. He, for the second year in a row, earned the best ever result for a Mexican driver during the Indianapolis 500 with a 4th place finish. O'Ward has F1 aspirations. I mean, he is been very upfront and honest about it, and McLaren has used him as a test and reserve driver at select races, or is going to use him as a test and reserve driver. But he actually made his Formula One debut in December at the Abu Dhabi circuit, if you remember that. I don't know if you remember seeing those pictures. After Colton Herta's deal, which we're going to talk about here in a second, because I think I want to dive into a little bit about an American IndyCar driver here, as we are both Americans. Brown actually offered Pato O'Ward a deal just like Colton Herta, a very similar one. And what I'm going to phrase is like a show of commitment to Pato O'Ward. And O'Ward hasn't accepted. He declined to sign it, which is the identical contract to Herta, by the way. So there is some questions on whether or not, someone else is going to offer Pato O'Ward an opportunity. McLaren would have the ability to kind of countermatch that. And if they can match 75% of it, they get to keep him based on the contract rules. Full stop. I don't think the man is going anywhere. I think he is going to stay with McLaren. I know McLaren wants to keep him to stay. It's interesting that in a lot of kind of the articles that I've, read, I've looked at, the discussions of Pato O'Ward leaving. One of McLaren's big things is that they want to keep him because not only do they think he's a future superstar, potentially could move him into Formula One, but also that he brings along with him the Mexican and the U.S. markets.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think when we think about an American driver in F1, it's similar to what is happening with Guan Yu Zhao this year with being a first Chinese driver in Formula One. You've got the sponsorships, you've got the fans, you've got everything that comes with being an American F1 driver, that comes with being a F1 driver from any country. But we haven't seen it yet because the bubble hasn't burst yet in the U.S.
Well, Award's Mexican.
Correct. Sorry, I was kind of talking more Colton Herta, but it would bring Mexico along with.
I think it's like what Checo did. When you go to Mexico, you see how everyone comes out for Checo. I don't know. I think it's definitely interesting how committed and how aware McLaren has got about their marketing. A quote that I normally don't read quotes, but I feel like this one's important because we're talking about Lando this episode. Zak Brown said, "Award needs to help us become more consistent and vice versa. The same thing we've seen out of Lando in Formula One." They're not going to let him go. He's not going anywhere. I just think that he might get stuck in IndyCar.
He may not have that opportunity to get to Formula One just because of how the dice roll.
I mean, it kind of all depends on if there's a spot open. And I don't want to talk about it, but I think we all know which seat we're talking about there. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to acknowledge. We know that we're going to have him
talk about it
until the end of 2023. I'm kind of pissed that Vegas decided to be in 2023 and not 2024 because that would have ensured that I would have had Daniel Ricciardo even longer. I'm going to write a letter. I'm going to write a letter to Formula One. Okay, so in terms of competing for like potentially a future F1 seat, which full stop, the McLaren IndyCar program is not their like testing ground for Formula One. That they've made it very clear they're not going to cannibalize their IndyCar program for the success of their Formula One team. But in terms of the other option, that is a rising star in IndyCar that could potentially fill an F1 seat, we have Colton Herta. He is an American IndyCar driver. He is currently racing with Andretti Autosport, which, fun fact, has very close ties with Zak Brown. Very close ties. He is the first, Colton Herta was the first IndyCar Series driver born in the 2000s. I'm very peeved about that. I'm feeling very old today. And is a 6-time IndyCar race winner. He actually is the youngest race winner in IndyCar Series history when he won at the Circuit of the Americas at 18 years, 359 days old. That was in 2018. And he is the youngest pole winner in IndyCar Series at 19 years, 83 days, which he won at Road America in 1919. And he wasn't even born in 19 anything in 2019. Jesus. He is the son of former IndyCar Series driver Brian Herta, who, had some glory days a little bit. He won 4 races as a driver, and he actually won 2 Indianapolis 500s as a team owner. And he is the current race strategist for his son's IndyCar Series team. So imagine your dad coming to work with you every day and getting a chirp in your ear. Like, not only was he chirping in your ear the entire time you were in karting, here he is in your like actual career. Oh wait, he's literally like Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's literally like having Joss there.
Hopefully, I think Brian. I haven't heard anything about Brian Herta being, questionable in
Yes,
his parenting
we know.
skills. I feel like I handled that one really well. Questionable in his parenting skills. So, like we said, Colton Herta in 2022, March, literally last month, it seems like an eternity ago, signed a deal to be part of the testing and development for McLaren. He is most likely going to take place in F1 tests, but specifically tests on the 2021 MCL 35M car. It's part of the new regulations called the testing of previous cars, where teams, constructors can actually use cars built in the last 3 years, the previous 3 years of this championship year. So that could be 2021, 2020, or 2019. They have to use like the specifications of that year, the tires of that year. But they can use those tests as a way to inform them on young talent. So, because those cars are quote unquote ancient technology for this year's championship, they can use those older cars as a way to look at potential drivers, look at potential talent, evaluate those talent, but also give their young drivers an opportunity to sit in an F1 car for their first time or second time or third time. So I'm going to be really interested to see when we get a Colton Herta F1 debut, and really if we're going to see Pato O'Ward come out again. I'm hopeful that we'll get an FP1 appearance from one, if not both of them.
And then our final intersection of motorsport racing is that the fact that McLaren has an esports team. So it's called the McLaren Shadow Project, which is a virtual racing program that shadows our real world equivalent. They entered esports in 2017 to explore the performance opportunities that exist between gaming and real world racing, since the intersection is actually a transference of skills between driving in the car versus driving in the sim / esports setup. So I'm actually pretty excited to see where esports goes. I haven't necessarily been following it too heavily, but I will say that it's pretty interesting to know how great it has become, especially with Twitch and streaming and everything that goes into it all, especially during the COVID years when we weren't able to, race. Esports really stepped in. So it's something that I think we should all be keeping our eyes on in the future.
So finally, why should you be a McLaren fan? Why should you be a part of the Papaya Nation? First off, you can't deny that McLaren has a freaking rich history of some of the greats of motorsport. You have Emerson Fittipaldi, you have James Hunt, you have Alan Prost, you have Niki Lauda, you have Ayrton Senna, you have Mika Häkkinen, you have David Coulthard, you have Kimi Räikkönen, you have Lewis Hamilton, you have Fernando Alonso, you have Jenson Button, Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, and Daniel Ricciardo, who is one of the greats.
He is one of the greats. And not only do you have all of those drivers, but you get to be part of the Papaya Party. You get to wear the coolest merch in Formula One.
I believe
so.
You can even throw it back to the Monaco livery anytime you want. I feel like this is an infomercial. Here's why you should be a part of the Papaya Party. The merch.
The merch. Simply the merch. Honestly, one of the reasons alone should be the Monaco livery.
Yeah, so Monaco livery is like a sub point to the Papaya Party. Like
sub point.
Papaya Party, sub point A. Monaco livery, sub point B, merch. Sub point C, the merch of the drivers. Number 3 is Zak Brown is literally happy from the Marvel Universe. And if that isn't a good enough reason for you to join the McLaren Nation, then I'm sorry, you literally just can't sit with us.
Yep, you can't sit with us. And finally, Daniel is absolute comedy. I mean, everyone was hyping up the pairing of Daniel and Lando, and we didn't really see it much last year, but I really truly believe that they're starting to come into each other's partnership and teammateship, and really bring out the comedy of each other.
Their new little bits that they're doing for like the McLaren marketing are giving me, this might be a little bit of a hot take, they're giving me some like Maxwell vibes. The one where they did the Australian sling was very
It's more
Maxwell.
Maxwell than Carlando. For sure.
Much more Maxwell, less Carlando, which I'm okay with
Yes.
because I know that nothing is going to infringe on Max and Daniel's relationship, but I want like they've been together too long. But Carlando is just a little bit newer, so it's a little fresher. So I don't want Carlando vibes out of Daniel and Lando.
I want Maxwell vibes. I love it.
Hate this level of analysis. God. Get a life, Megan.
All right, I'll bring us into our up next and wrap it up. Up next is the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix in Imola, Italy at the Autodromo Enzo Edino Ferrari. The 63-lap race takes place on April 24th for round 4 of the 2022 season. This track has a lot of history tied to it. It first hosted the Italian Grand Prix in 1980, and it went on to host the San Marino Grand Prix from 81 all the way up until 2006. We luckily returned to racing here in 2020 due to COVID, and after testing his AlphaTauri at the track for the build-up to the 2020 season, Pierre Gasly called the experience one of the best he's ever had in a Formula One car. The anti-clockwise circuit is fast with an old-school feel and the iconic corners of Acqua Minerale and Piratella. Join us next week for our race recap.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us at Dirty Driving Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
Until next time, stay dirty.